Hello and welcome to this week's video of My Hero Academia. This week I'm reviewing episode 8 of volume 4 of Vigilantes. You know how this works by now. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below and you will be read out in a future video. Whilst you're there, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small broadcasters. Support your local small broadcaster today. It will do them a power of good. We are very close to breaking the 105 subscriber goal. If I break that, then I'll end up doing a review of the second My Hero Academia movie, as that's the only one that I haven't done yet. But between then and now, let us get on to the review and go into the positives. And the headline positives for this particular review is that this was a satisfactory conclusion to the battle and a perfect way to end this particular volume, season and episode. This is an episode which, you know, might as well just get it out of the way here and now, that actually explained how the hell Knuckleduster survived getting his heart stopped in a couple episodes previously. Like in the previous episode, he just gets up as though nothing had happened, despite the start of the episode him going, "Oh god, I'm going to bloody well die." We end up getting explained to us that he just used the taser as a defibrillator. It would have been nice to see that. You know, it would have been good. It would help have built stuff up a little bit more. It would have made me look quite much of a tit for including it as a negative for last week's episode. But hey ho, you can only review that's what's in front of you. But hey, it did at least act in some way to help build up the tension within that particular fight sequence. Even if I did think that it resolved itself a little bit too quickly. But hey ho, we're getting distracted now. Back to the review itself. And I have to say that this episode itself, as you'll know from having read it, almost exclusively focuses on the final moments of the fight between Bee and Knuckleduster. I say the fight because at this point it's pretty much just done with. All we're left with is the gooey, nasty matter of getting rid of the bee parasite. We do get a brief flash for a little bit of a wrap-up for the stuff with Popstep, which is fine for what it is. It's well drawn. They've given up on writing lyrics of this song, so you just see a bunch of happy people whilst everyone's dancing, and that's fine for what it is. There's this brief little moment with Eraserhead and the monster villain guy who seems to be slowly returning to normal, maybe, which is fine for what it is. Again, I probably will reflect upon all that stuff in the big volume review in a couple of weeks' time, but hey, all that stuff outside of the stuff with Knuckleduster and Bee is perfectly fine. It's cute, it's fun, it's good for what it is. To pivot back around to the main meat of the actual episode itself, in this episode we do get to find out where Knuckleduster got his taser from. He got it from that gangster guy that the League of Villains works with in the main series. I will admit that seeing this character does recontextualise them a little bit. And I only say a little bit because it really doesn't change much about them. It doesn't throw them in a new light. It doesn't show them as being some kind of good guy deep down. It doesn't show them as being some kind of maverick. It just adds a little bit of a shade of grey to the character. This guy was seemingly just working with the League of Villains because of money, and not because he was necessarily with them. He's just a gangster. He's just a mercenary. He's just the guy with the connections that's going to be doing this just for the sake of money. Which is fine, perfectly fine. It's a good exploration on that character for what little we'd end up seeing with him. But it also helps to explain how Knuckleduster has been as durable as he has been over the past few weeks and months of reviewing this. Because, as has been said time and again, Knuckleduster does not have a quirk. He has no superpowers, and yet he's able to go toe-to-toe with villains at like 3 times larger, with him fighting with superheroes that have been trained for years. And the explanation is purely and simply, he takes painkillers. He takes lots and lots of yummy painkillers to take the pain away. So it isn't that he's durable, it's just that he's so physically numb that nothing that hits him can really stop him, because he doesn't feel it. Which does explain away a fair bit of the whole anime fight bullshit with him. Like, again, he's able to deal with fighting these big, muscle-bound monsters and superheroes that have been training for years and know the great ways to knock someone out, and yet he doesn't go down. And it's not because anime, it's because drugs! That's the thing that's been keeping him going all this time. Like, yes, it doesn't really throw the entire thing into a new light, much like the inclusion of the gangster character. but it does add a certain level of grit and realism to all of this, which I do like. It's like a few weeks ago, I should say a few volumes ago, where Knuckleduster's solution to help Crawler get about was to just use motorcycle protective gear to help protect himself. Just the very normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday, buy-off-a-shelf kind of solutions that I kind of like with it. It makes it all feel a little bit more lived in. Now, I will admit that you can kind of roll your eyes to the inclusion of a character from the main series like this. Like, they just seem to be there for the sake of oh hey, I remember that guy. But at the same time, it does help make the world feel a little bit more lived in. And it does help to make this whole adventure seem a little bit greyer than I think that a lot of people have been taking from it. Let us be clear here, our main cast of characters, Knuckleduster, Popstep, Crawler, they're vigilantes. What they're doing here is still incredibly illegal by the rules of this world. Yeah, they're still good guys, but by the weight of the law, they're not. And typically with these kind of vigilante stories, it's easy to just look at them as just being an extension of the heroes, an extension of whatever hero group, hero society that there is there, but let's be honest, they're not. They're still breaking the law, and in order to keep themselves from going to prison, they're going to, at times, have to work with some very dodgy people. Because let's face it, given the kind of fights that they're getting into, they can't exactly go to the hospital with them. Like, if they get into some big fight with some big villain, they can't just nip around to the hospital because they're going to want to know what happened with them. So they're going to have to see some backstreet surgeon to get themselves fixed, which makes total sense. I will admit that, you know, I do kind of like the idea of using a pre-existing character, because it helps sell the idea that, yes, these guys that we follow in this show are still good, but they're sometimes going to have to work with some really dodgy people to end up saving the day, because, you know, that's just the nature of this world. And by using a pre-existing character, we don't have to educate the audience as to who they are and who they really are. Like, we remember this guy from the main series. We know that they're not a good guy. We know that they're at the very least a gangster. And in this, we get to see a little bit more for the kind of dealings that they really do and the kind of people that they work with. It's not just villains, it's also vigilantes, which, again, makes a lot of sense. And I do like the fact that we're actually leaning into that a little bit slightly. I don't want us to go down a deep, dark path where we're just totally recontextualizing our main cast and making them out to be a lot more morally dubious than they are, because I don't think that works with them as characters and as human beings, because it's really not something that's been set up with their personality. But I at least respect the fact that we're saying, yeah, these guys are good guys, but they're sometimes going to have to work with bad people to get this job done. With this episode, of course, as predicted many weeks ago, when it came to dealing with Bee once and for all, we were going to get in some icky, gooey nastiness as Knuckleduster rips the parasite out of his daughter's head, eye socket first. I will admit that it wasn't as nasty, as scrunchy and disgusting looking as I had feared or hoped, but it was still gross enough all the same. Like, we still have the whole image of Knuckleduster using little clippers to rip the parasite out of what was briefly his dead daughter's body, then killing the bee itself with a big homemade bomb. But hey, it's gooey and it's nasty stuff, but it's effective stuff for what that it is. It does it perfectly well, and there's a part of me that, upon reflection here and now, as I just kind of go off script a little bit, is happy that it didn't get too gratuitous. It is just a case of, right, go in, get it out, it's nasty and scrunchy and disgusting, but hey-ho, it worked, and then we had to get into the matter of making sure that his daughter actually does pull through with all of this, as much as one can do after going through all of that. Of course, this is functionally the end of Bee! No more Bee! Maybe! Because at the end of the episode, we do get that guy snatching off with one of the surviving bees. Who they are and what they're doing with it, I'm sure that we'll find out before too long. I will admit, there is a part of me that's worried that it might be Stain, but this guy's acting too cognizant and stable for it to be Stain. But hey, watch me be wrong, and it is him, and he just decides to become a beekeeper or something for a little bit. I really don't know. I've got a feeling, though, that it won't be. It'll be connected to whoever Bee has been working with all this time. like maybe a queen bee or something like that. That would be neat. You know, that'd be neat. That'd be an interesting angle to go with all of this. But, you know, overall, and we're not getting into the overview just yet. I'm just still talking about in the positives. Like I said in the intro, I feel that this is a perfect way to end this arc. And I do feel that is true. Though I will mention a minor negative in a little while. So maybe it's not a perfect way. It's more of a near perfect way to end this. It all wraps up the drama and action that we've had set up over the past few weeks in a rather neat and efficient way. I can't say that it was all done satisfactorily for reasons which, again, I will go into when we get to the big volume review, but given what the author/authors seem to be aiming for, they stuck the landing with this. Bee is defeated. This villain that we've had for the better part of, functionally for us, a few months now, he's gone, done and dusted, never to return, at least in this current form of it. The hostage, Tamao, Knuckleduster's daughter, is saved. The character drama with our supporting cast is resolved. Knuckleduster and Bee have both been overcoming a source of personal pain and anxiety. That pain and anxiety might still echo long after the fact, but at least now in this moment they can start to recover. There's still a big threat out there, this delivery man guy who's nicked off with one of these surviving bees. They're still involved with this somehow. They really could be anyone, and that's kind of interesting. Like, there is no villain in the background. There is no cutscene of someone in the background going, "Yes, everything's going perfectly to plan." You know, that we don't have anything like that. It's kept rather ambiguous as to who they are and what they're doing. And if you really wanted to duck out here and just stop reading Vigilantes, you could always just say, "Oh, that's just some strange guy acting strangely because they're strange," or, "Oh, it's just another villain, so we can set up for a here we go again kind of a deal." Though, let's be honest, if you've got this far into Vigilantes, chances are you're still going to be reading this after the fact, and if this gets an anime, you're probably still going to be wanting to watch this after the fact. Though I will admit, as neat as it is, there's still a little bit of overhang for the next volume. There no doubt will be some aftermath stuff involved, because the next episode of this volume is another OVA equivalent. Though we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I've not read it yet, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And all that said, however, let us get into the negatives, and this is only a minor negative in the grand scheme of things. Like, before we get into the overview itself, I have to say that I did enjoy this episode quite a lot, but my minor negative for here and now is that, as I've just mentioned, there is quite a bit of overhang that is going to end up going into the next volume. If this was a TV show, you could easily have had a scene where Knuckleduster and his daughter are at the hospital. Knuckleduster's meeting his daughter in the hospital. We did get an ominous call. He did get an ominous call from the doctors a few weeks ago about his wife. Something bad going on with them, so we have to deal with that as well. Whether or not we will do... Well, actually, we will do. I mean, they're not going to duck that out. They are actually going to end up covering that. But the issue for me is the fact they're going to end up covering this like in the first episode or two of the next volume. So unless this is like a 10-episode volume thing, I worry that it's going to end up taking oxygen for other things, which might mean that the pacing of the next volume might feel a little bit off. It might feel a little bit more compacted if they're trying to fit an entire storyline into what might be a 6-episode run, or it might feel expedited as we just have to rush through this stuff to get it all out of the way. But we'll see. I mean, maybe there's going to be a little bit more overhang. Maybe the next volume will be a little bit more of a, I'd hate to say it, but more of a filler thing. Maybe not filler, but more a case of backstory and just building up the world a little bit. World building, I think, would be a better term for it, but we'll soon see about that. So, to get into the actual overview itself, I think that this is a great way to end the volume. I think that for a volume that, by and large, I've had a lot of issues with, I think this is the best way that it possibly could have ended, given the material that was in front of us. I will still always say that I think it could have been done better, but for what we do get is good. I do dislike the fact we're going to have a bit of overview in overhang into the next volume, but you know, that's just something that we just got to deal with. It might only be an episode or so, might not even be that, it just might be a quick thing of us getting to see the character, nice little touching moment before ominous stuff starts happening in the background. We'll soon see about that. The episode itself, again, is fine. The artwork is decent enough. I would have liked things to maybe get a little bit scrunchier and nastier with the whole pulling out of the bee Parasite! Sorry, I have to get these bees out of the way because it might be a while before I actually get to say that bee stuff ever again, which means that the whole Sean Bean bee thing's going to have to be retired for another half decade, but we'll soon see about that. But anyway, great episode itself. I really did enjoy it. With all that said and done, however, let's get into Comment Corner! Now it's time for Comment Corner, and we have a comment from Big X1 who says, I wish that this episode and the next one were one. This one feels like it ends too soon. Thank you for your comment, and of course he's referring to last week's episode and this week's episode, and I do agree to a degree that you probably could combine the two, because this week's episode is pretty much just wrapping up the final few moments of the fight with Bee, so in that regard, you know, it really is just finishing them off, and that's just about it, and not a whole lot of substance really happens aside from the stuff with that, but I feel that that's been the problem for the past few episodes. All the stuff with Pop Step and the others has just kind of been put to one side as a, oh hey, what are they doing? But that's a discussion for a whole other point and whole other time. So I suppose if this ever does get an anime, you quite easily put the two episodes together. But we'll see where all that goes. Next week we will be reviewing the, I think it's the second, no wait, it will be the third special episode of Vigilantes, episode 0. I've already read it. I have a few thoughts about it, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But between then and now, let me know what you thought about this week's episode in the comment section down below. If you have seen next week's episode, by all means, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you've been thinking about things, and let me know how you feel about things. Well, that's done, so I will just say, see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!